sister's a therapist and I tell jokes. We both want to help all kinds of folks.
Hello, and welcome to My Sister's a Therapist. This is a podcast where a comedian and a therapist talk about mental health stuff, pop culture stuff, and just whatever's on their minds. My name is Virginia Jones, and I'm a stand-up comedian, but my sister's a therapist.
Hello, I'm Laura Ryan. I'm a licensed marriage and family therapist, but my main credit is sister to funniest woman in Portland, Virginia Jones. Congratulations.
Thank you very much. Funniest woman is not a title that they give out. I am funniest woman because I am number 2 in Portland's funniest person competition. I thought I was going to win, but then a white man with a mustache showed up and it was all over for me.
Shock and awe. So I have some fan fun.
This segment is now called Fan Fun. Fan Fun. Fan Fun. We just made it up.
I got a message from Zach G, super fan.
Hi, Zach G.
Hello, Zach G. He said, thanks for the shout out the other day. Every time I hear my name in lights, it makes me grateful that I don't have the delusion where the radio and TV are speaking directly to me.
Ooh.
I also got a message from listener Lane, who told me that she actually met the owners of Bitch and Sauce IRL in San Diego many years ago when it was a very small company. I found out that they have actually split. So there's 2 brothers and a sister, and the 2 brothers have gone separate ways. There's been a falling out. So they are starting their own company called G Sauce, Jeesause, I think, to sound like our Lord and Savior. I'm not sure.
As long as she's still putting the bitch and sauce, I'm happy.
And Lane, let me know. If you're an Austin local and you're hearing this soon, there's a buy one, get one free bitch and sauce advertisement going. It's a heck of a deal. All flavors except dill pickle, says Lane.
Now, I just saw dill pickle flavor and I don't agree with it. At all stores, at HEB, where?
Wheatsville Co-op, if you're in Austin, Texas.
Wheatsville Co-op. And thank you for all the inside information about bitch and sauce. That's awesome. On this podcast, we take turns studying up on a subject, and then one of us presents it to the other one, and then all hell breaks loose. This week, it's Laura's topic. Laura, what are we talking about today?
We've got a very sexy topic today, the sunk cost fallacy. I'm going to start with a personal story about the sunk cost fallacy. We used to have a Neiman Marcus last call here in Austin. On one particular day, I found a pair of shoes. I'm going to describe them to you. They were a red patent leather, kind of across the toes, a very thick, chunky heel that was sort of like see-through plastic, but red. It was interesting. And the original sticker price for these shoes was $1,000, and I got them for $125. That's way more than I'd ever spend. These shoes, they were very attractive and very interesting shoes. They were incredibly uncomfortable. The patent leather would just cut into my foot, and they were really hard to walk in because this material that they were made out of was just really heavy. I had those shoes for potentially 15 years because I kept thinking, well, I spent so much money on them. I can't get rid of them now. Do you have anything like that?
I have a shoe story, and it's the same thing. I got heavily discounted shoes, and they were so beautiful, and they were Italian, and they were sculptural, and they looked so good. And as soon as I put them on my feet, I was in hell. I wore them in a photo shoot, and then I thought they've done their job. And because they had done this job, I could get rid of them. I see this happening all the time. I see it happening in relationships when women say things like, well, I'm not happy, but we've been together for 5 years and I don't want to lose that time. You're not losing that time. What you're losing is a future where you could be happier than you are right now. But women get very into, I've burned 7 years with this person, and so I have to keep going. No, you don't.
I think that's what I did in my first relationship and probably my marriage. Specifically with my marriage, I had invested time, but I'd also spent thousands and thousands of dollars to get him here, because it was a green card. Of course, he wasn't ponying up any of the money to sponsor himself. I was looking to get the payback on that, and it just never happened. There's an article by the Decision Lab called "Why Are We Likely to Continue with an Investment Even If It Would Be Rational to Give It Up?" In economic terms, sunk costs are costs that have already been incurred and cannot be recovered. Therefore, it should not be a factor in current decision making. It's irrational to use irrecoverable costs to justify a present decision. Example, wearing expensive but incredibly uncomfortable shoes. If we acted rationally, only future costs and benefits would be taken into account. Regardless of what we have already invested, we will not get it back, whether or not we follow through on the decision.
Whenever people talk about sunk costs, I think about the film The Money Pit, which is a Tom Hanks and Shelley Long film I have never seen. They buy a huge mansion and they know it's a fixer-upper, but then it goes to ridiculous lengths and they're never going to fix it up. But it's hard for them to admit we've just lost this money.
I've actually seen the movie. There's this one scene where he's looking out the window, he's drinking a cup of coffee, and he's starting to feel like, I think we're going to get ahead of this. And then immediately the whole floor caves in and he falls down.
And when I was a younger person, I felt like it was a moral failing if you didn't finish a book, because I think that was something my mother taught me. You're watching a movie and you're like, I'm just not enjoying this movie. It's a lot easier for me now to walk away from that stuff and say, if I'm not enjoying it now, I'm not enjoying it now. If I wasn't enjoying it before and there's no indication that I'm going to enjoy it in the future, I can just roll out. But I understand there's an investment of time. There's an investment of attention. It doesn't have to be a financial investment. There's an investment of emotion sometimes that it's hard to walk away from. Sunk cost fallacy. Let's just define it. We are making irrational decisions because we are factoring in influences other than the current alternatives. This fallacy affects many different areas of our lives, such as our relationships, investment, and career path, leading to suboptimal outcomes. Same thing with jobs. People will say, I'm not happy in my job, but I've been here for 10 years. And what?
I've kissed my boss's butt every day for the last 10 years. I've invested in a wardrobe for this job. I've gotten all this training. I've learned all these things about this business. And I don't want to start over again because I've already put so much into it.
And I definitely feel that when I started looking for a job and found it hard to find a job in my area of expertise, I don't want to burn this 25 years of experience I have. It's hard to pivot because I will be wasting this resource that I have.
I think it's the idea that I've made an investment. I have a historically very difficult time leaving anything. I'm not very good at quitting. I'm not a quitter.
Now that I've had a second to think about it, I've thought of a better sunk cost example that is not about shoes, although those shoes were really a heartbreaker. When my marriage was ending, I was doing a comedy festival in Boston, and because my spouse had lived there, I had bought airline ticket for him to come. And he told me, you may as well take me on this trip because you've already spent the money. It was a terrible idea. It was 100% worth losing $300 or whatever it was to not have my recently announced he wanted a divorced spouse there, texting his girlfriend, hiding in the bathroom with his phone, and making me miserable. I wasn't at my best. I didn't do all the networking and schmoozing that I should have done. I missed opportunities because I was like, well, I don't want to waste this money. I want to be cool. You think I don't want to be cool?
I want to be cool because my husband's deciding to cheat on me. I'm not sure what's cool about that.
Totally cool. Yeah, we can totally lie next to each other in a hotel bed while you talk to your new partner. That's totally cool. You think I'm not cool? I wish I'd done that differently.
I had a similar experience. I was dating somebody and I found out that he was stalking me on the internet because he was asking me about this dating website. And he was saying, why are you on this dating website? And I was thinking, I'm not on that website. And he said, yeah, you were on it today. How do you know that? Because you don't live with me. It was true. I actually had been on that website because they had auto charged me. And I went on there to turn that off and get my money back. We had a trip planned literally the next day. I did it and I thought, I'm going to make the most of this and I'm going to dump him when we get home. And that's what I did.
This dumping can wait until we get home.
We can have a few laughs in the meantime.
I think as an adult, it's easier to compartmentalize that stuff. I don't know if I would have been able to have fun on that trip as a 20-something. Car is a huge sunk cost thing. It's tricky because when you own an older car, there comes a moment where you are spending more repairing it than you are saving by not having a car payment. And it's very hard to detect when that is.
I've been doing it for about 2 years, and it turns out I'm still paying less than I would pay on a car payment.
Great. Then you're doing great.
As John Ryan would say, c'est la vie. From the same article, believe it or not, the sunk cost fallacy can significantly impact our personal relationships. Imagine you're with a long-term partner who no longer makes you happy, but you hesitate to end things because of the time and emotional energy you've already invested in the relationship. Rather than focusing on the potential for a healthier and more fulfilling future, you might find yourself clinging to the past, fearing that leaving your partner would mean all of your previous efforts were wasted. Many of us find ourselves stuck in a job or career path that no longer aligns with our goals or interests, but hesitate to make the change because of the time, effort, or education we've already put in.
And in the relationship example, imagine it's a relationship where you've been to therapy, you've talked about the things, you've tried to reach an understanding that will allow you to move forward. And none of that stuff has worked. Your partner is unwilling to make any changes to meet you halfway. So you're just marking time. I think that this phenomenon, you're going to be surprised. I think it's related to misogyny and the patriarchy. I think women especially, this trips us up in relationships because we've already had sex with someone and there's this tally you have in your head. Well, I've had sex with 6 people. If I start having sex with another person, 7 people. And because we carry around this idea that that number matters, that number says anything about who you are as a person, we can be loath to end a relationship that is not working. There's this idea of wasted time, wasted potential. I should be in a place in this relationship where I'm ready to have kids. I should be in a place in this relationship where we're ready to get married. Because I'm not, I'm motivated to work twice as hard to get to these endpoints. And the fact is that if you're with someone you don't want to be with without the kids and without the marriage, guess what? That's not going to improve.
What I have found is having a kid makes your life so much easier and so much more fun. And you just laugh and laugh every day after you have a kid. I think I did this with my marriage because we went to every couples training there was. We went to every couples weekend. We were going to weekly therapy. I had just put in so much effort to try to mold him into a healthier person. I didn't want to give up my efforts. I actually remember thinking, what if after all of this, he gets better for the next person? And since we split up, he has not had a successful relationship.
In a way, it feels good because your biases are confirmed. But in a way, it feels bad because you were able to string that crap along for years and years.
Because I was an idiot.
The idea that you need to stay in a relationship because all that effort, all that time will be wasted. It's not true because you've learned stuff. You are coming out of it more equipped for a better relationship than you were before.
Refer back to our Lego My Imago episode. That's sort of my whole thing when I work with couples. I know that they're coming in to save their marriage, but my goal for them is that they're learning something about themselves and being able to take something away from this experience so that they can grow.
And that's the tricky thing they don't tell you about couples therapy. The point of couples therapy is not to save the relationship. And a lot of the relationships are not going to be saved because they're not a good pairing. The point of it is for you to figure out what your part is and how to do better in the future.
I think also to figure out why you picked this person.
So you don't just keep picking the person with the same exact problem over and over again.
Regarding the work situation, I remember, I think it was a TikTok. This person had gone through law school and they were saying, I don't think this is it, but I've already done my undergrad. I've already gone through law school. I've passed the bar. I've done all these hard things.
I've spent all this money.
Right. And basically, a lawyer responded and said, hey, you're going to have to do this as your full-time job for the next 40 years. And it's not going to be an easy job. It's a really hard job. So if you hate it now, get out now, because wasting the rest of your professional career doing something you hate is not the move.
Because what we get disconnected from is that your duty on this earth is not to, 1, have the longest relationship, 2, drive a car for 800,000 miles, 3, never leave a job. Your duty being here is to have a good experience in your life and to learn things and maybe connect with people, maybe do some art. Your job is not to suffer. Everyone has to endure suffering, but that's not actually why you're here.
You're obviously not Catholic.
Related to this is the commitment bias, also known as the escalation of commitment, describes our tendency to remain committed to our past behaviors, particularly those exhibited publicly, even if they do not have desirable outcomes.
I felt a lot of this specifically with my marriage because I kept saying to myself, I stood on a beach and told God and the universe and everyone that this was my person. And now I feel stupid.
I remember having this conversation with you many times. You just thought because of our upbringing and the trauma of our childhood, even when you were in a situation that wasn't making you happy, I can just muscle through it. I'm just going to put this thing on my back and I'm going to walk up the mountain. I can make this relationship work through brute force.
Sheer will. I went to a party recently and someone was doing 1-card tarot readings. The thing that this woman said to me was, you're just so strong and you're so good at figuring stuff out. And I said, you know what? I'm really tired of being strong. I'm really tired of figuring stuff out. This is why I'm not dating men anymore, because I just can't bear being the strong one anymore. I'm done.
Right.
I'm done with strength.
If I'm going to caretake a man and do everything for him and help him pull a loose tooth, he better be my kid.
By God, he better be a child. I'm not pulling any adult men's teeth. Actually, I'm
No.
not even pulling a child's tooth. I'm being asked to stand nearby while he does it.
Dude, we're entering into a part of life where some of your stuff is going to be your problem, and tooth pulling is one.
Tooth pulling has always been his problem. I'm so squeamish around that. When we have previously invested in a choice from the same article, we will likely feel guilty or regretful if we do not follow through. The sunk cost fallacy is associated with a commitment bias, which we just mentioned, where we continue to support our past decisions despite new evidence suggesting that it isn't the best course of action. We fail to consider that whatever time, effort, or money we have already expended will not be recovered.
Some related stuff that I found on the internet, and you mentioned this, the need to be right. There's a desire to avoid that you've made a bad decision. So you're just going to keep putting stuff into the thing that's not working.
I'm going to take this bad decision and turn it into good.
Yeah, I did it. I've done this. And now I'm just going to live with it. At the time, I truly thought everyone's marriage was just as unhappy, because I thought once you get to this point where the bloom's off the rose and this person is just disappointing you all the time, I'm sure that this is almost universal. Everybody has an unhappy marriage and everybody is lying about it. And this is just what it is.
And I remember at some point in my life, I had gotten laid off from my very, very difficult job that I hated. And I remember someone saying to me, Laura, sometimes you won't leave a situation, but your angels will drag you out of it. Sometimes when I'm not able to make the right decision, the universe or whatever does it for me.
Here we're just talking about pride. You don't want to admit that the duty you've been given, you can't do. You don't want to admit that you can't find a way forward with this person who at some point was the person you chose. I can't make a mistake. I was having this conversation with one of my direct reports this week where I said, when I was new in my career, when I made a mistake, I really wanted to leave that job because I didn't want to admit that I did something wrong. I didn't want to be judged for it. And I didn't feel that I could be forgiven. And I would start looking for another job. But that's just pride. Everybody makes mistakes. I'm a human person. My last manager, who was not so great, told me, you can't make mistakes. When you say that, you're asking me not to be a human. That's not available to me.
And I think for me, specifically related to marriage, I felt so ashamed that I have bad judgment, that I chose wrong, that I spent all of this time and money and energy pouring into this relationship. And I was wrong. I was stupid. And I told everybody stuff about what a great situation this was going to be. And it was not good. I remember a client in the past was thinking about what to do with their marriage. And I remember she said, well, I said vows. You were making a commitment, but you didn't understand what you were committing to. It's sort of the same as I'm hiring an employee and this is the agreement. This is what we're going to do. And then this employee never shows up to work or comes in drunk. Our commitment is void at that point because they're not doing their half. If you knew that the qualities of the relationship that you're experiencing now were what you were going to expect, you would have never made a vow to this person.
You didn't know that you were promising to be used and abused and ignored and have every resource pulled out of you every day of your life. When you say I've made vows, in an environment, Laura, where religiosity in America has dropped from 90% and now it's not even 70, you've made vows to whom? You've made vows to what? To the state of Texas? To your parents? I saw a TikTok where a woman was talking to her husband and they were estranged and they were having a bad time. And she just said, hey, we're both miserable. Nobody's happy here. We need to end this. And he said, but we made a promise, but I believe in marriage. And that's not the thing, believing in an institution. That's just a thing we made up.
I do believe in honoring my commitments. If I sign a contract to pay this debt off, I'm not allowed to just run off and do whatever I want. Your word is your bond. I think that that's important. But if the thing that I am agreeing to is not being done, then the contract is void.
Also, you're agreeing to try. You're agreeing to bring your best self and to do your best. You're not agreeing to succeed. You're not promising to succeed because you can't promise that. That's not known to us.
Because half of the contract is the other person and their level of participation. If I borrow money from the bank and agree to pay it back, but then the bank burns my house down, I don't think I'm responsible anymore. I think our contract is void.
On this tack, while it goes against our best interest, we often engage in an irrational escalation of commitment, meaning we continue investing our time and resources despite facing increasingly negative outcomes. You just don't give up. You see this a lot in Los Angeles, California.
You mean people who keep living there, even though their house is on fire and flooded?
More like, I moved to LA. I said I was going to be an actor. I took the classes. I got the headshots. I got management, and I'm not where I want to be. And I just keep going out to auditions and auditions and auditions. There is a sunk cost. I left my job. Maybe I left a relationship. Maybe I've sacrificed some things to be here. But guess what? That sacrifice doesn't mean you'll be successful. I just see people staying there and bashing their heads against the wall. And maybe auditioning is their art form. Maybe that's all they want to do. LA will just take your life and your time, and you're not guaranteed to get anything back. If you find that you are keeping with the big dream in a sunk cost manner, you should get out.
So I have a magnet on my fridge, and it's a quote from controversial person Winston Churchill. But the quote is, never, never, never give up. It's one of the big things that I've done with my life. And I think it's a horrible mistake. I remember living in an apartment where my neighbor almost daily was calling the cops on me because she couldn't handle the fact that I was walking across my living room floor. I remember she would hit the ceiling of her apartment, the floor of my apartment, with a broom, scream at me. She reported me to the landlord for using the water closet for storage. And it was just one thing after another. I was so bound and determined to not let her win that I just stayed, even though she made my life a living hell.
Where's the line between sunk cost fallacy and just stubbornness, just sheer stubbornness?
It's a pretty thin line, I think. Refusing to change one's stance may not only lead to undesirable results, but can also act as a barrier to personal growth. We might stay in jobs, education paths, apartments, or relationships that no longer make sense with our goals.
My manager, when I was talking about leaving Los Angeles, recommended a book. I hate that I can't remember what it was called, but it was something about the new happy. And the core of the book was that this woman always wanted to have a child. When she found the partner she wanted to have kids with, they moved forward in their goal, and it just didn't happen for them. She went from doing it the old-fashioned way to doing in vitro and going through treatments over and over again, which are thousands and thousands of dollars. She got to the last treatment. The doctor said, well, we can try one more time. It probably won't work. Like Winston Churchill, she wanted to just never stop trying. Finally, she had to make her peace with the fact that this wasn't going to happen for her. It felt super unfair and unjust because this is something that had always been a goal. But you can't 100% control the outcome of your goals. You can control making them and working towards them. My former manager recommended this to me because he had read it when he had stopped acting, because to be a famous actor, capital F, capital A, had been his goal. It's painful to have to pivot. You can find a new thing. You don't have to feel trapped just because you got a sunk cost and the thing that you wanted to do didn't work out.
A good friend of mine had a similar experience. She had already invested $70,000 in vitro, and she was getting ready to head up to the plate yet again. She said, well, what do you think I should do? And I said, you absolutely should not do this. This is a terrible idea. And she said, but I've already invested so much time, so much money, so much energy. And I said, okay, but let's look at it this way. Every night you go to the casino, and at this point, you're 70 grand in the hole. Do you really want to go up and sit at the poker table again?
Because guess what? When that fictional baby comes into the earth, he's not going to be holding $70,000.
That's what you think.
He's in fact going to cost you a lot more money.
Before my son was even born, he'd already cost me $5,000.
Children are the ultimate sunk cost fallacy. Because you're just like, oh, I've just put so much into this kid. I can't get rid of him now.
I mean, every night I just think I could put him in the dumpster now, but I've put too much in at this point.
The problem is that he's now of an age that he will crawl out.
That's true. And he'll tell people what I did.
Right. Not only do we attempt to justify our behaviors to ourselves, but we also try to make others see our behaviors as rational. In an attempt to save face, we may defend our behavior to others by trying to convince them that our choice was not bad after all. And that's all pride. You have to embrace your own fallibility as a person and let go of this idea that you can't make mistakes, or that if you do make mistakes, you cannot be loved. I think that's the core of it. If I make a mistake, if I am a flawed human being, no one's going to love me, no one's going to accept me. You have to accept that despite what you were taught as a child, you can err. It is okay. You can change your mind. You can say, you know what? This job, education, car, child is no longer serving me.
I think I'm done with this child. So the sunk cost fallacy, according to behavioraleconomics.com, this is a part that we haven't talked about yet. Loss aversion is an important concept associated with prospect theory and is encapsulated in the expression losses loom larger than gains. It is thought that the pain of losing is psychologically about twice as powerful as the pleasure of gaining. People are more willing to take risks to avoid a loss than to make a gain.
This is a sad truth about how our brains are wired. Our caveman brains are wired to be more aware of failure and more aware of loss than we are of gains. In comedy, you have to write down things that people say to you, maybe put it on a website or put it on your one sheet, because you will forget every nice thing anyone's ever said about your comedy. And you will remember the one person one time that said, I don't know, it's just a bunch of chick stuff. That's what we are oriented towards. Tell me something bad so I can remember it and resent it for the rest of my life.
I don't know why the human brain does that. It's pretty irritating. I have a friend who has had issues with not letting go of belongings. Something that I've noticed about her when we talk about this is she remembers all the times that she did get rid of something and then she needed it later.
Everything I've gotten rid of in my life, there's a handful of times where I'm like, oh, I wish I still had that.
Well, I remember when my purse got stolen many years ago, there was this lipstick that they stopped making after the purse was stolen. I still think about it sometimes. It keeps me up nights.
Here's some evidence that makes us feel a little bit better about ourselves. Research suggests that rats, mice, and humans are all sensitive to sunk costs after they have made the decision to pursue a reward, and that a capacity for cognitive reflection can reduce sunk cost behavior. So a rat, even being electrocuted 5 times, damn it, I'm going to have that thing. I've already been electrocuted a bunch.
I'm going to get that marshmallow or that peanut or whatever it is.
Peanut flavored marshmallow. Your quote about your friend who can't let go of stuff reminds me of the quote you sent me. Emotional attachment. As a task, project, or commitment continues, we grow more emotionally attached, making it more challenging to let go. I lived with someone who still had a lot of stuff from college, pots and pans. And when I asked, what is the significance of this? You don't need this. I'm very practical, probably to a psychotic degree. I think of objects as objects in Heidegger's ontology, at hand or objects to hand. They're either useful or they're not useful. And if they're not useful in my day-to-day life now, I want to get rid of them. But he'd formed emotional attachments to plates just because he'd had them a long time. And there's nothing special about it. It's no longer a match set. You broke one, you scratched one, so you've got a bunch of non-matching plates, but you've had them a long time. And that's reason enough to keep them the way they are.
And I remember my mother would criticize me after my relationship ended and say, whenever she suggested that I leave my first boyfriend, I would say, but we've known each other forever. My whole life has been with him.
And that was true.
It was true. It turns out I was able to have a whole life without him too.
I have empathy for that person because when you're a kid, you don't realize how long life is. I was with my high school boyfriend for 3 years. And that's still a very significant relationship to me. I still remember stuff about it. He's still in my life. He doesn't listen to the podcast because he hasn't figured out how. That relationship, even though it's kind of short by my standards now, was incredibly important and influential. And it taught me a lot of stuff. It's okay that it ended. I didn't stop learning and loving and existing when it ended, but I thought that I might. And I also think part of being a traumatized young person is you think, well, I've tricked this person into loving me, but how can I do it again?
So justification and rationalization. This is from the same article that you just read from. Sunk cost fallacy, Why We Can't Let Go by Jeremy Sutton. As the sunk cost increases, we are less able to admit our mistakes or poor decisions. By committing more to the fallacy, we continue to justify our initial and ongoing investment, even when it's not rational to do so.
Does this go back to Grey Gardens? Here's 2 people in a very messed up relationship in a house that is falling apart, but they don't feel that they can leave it. We've lived our whole lives here. My mother's been here since 1936.
Refer to our Grey Gardens episode.
I'm trying to think of other examples of people who are just doing something that from the outside looks absurd, but it makes sense to them.
I've been that person. I've only had one bike in my life. During the pandemonium, you couldn't get your hands on a bike. and I was riding my bike constantly because there was nothing else to do. I think this bike was a $50 investment in 1993. And I ended up spending probably $1,000 over that 2-year period trying to get this thing back on the road.
One of the things that I worry about and question about us as a culture is the extreme disposability of things, especially technology. It makes me really aggravated. Your grandma bought a refrigerator and it would have maybe lasted 50 years. And now when something's 3 years old, we're like, it's out of warranty. Just put it in the tip, throw it out. But then some people we know go to the other extreme of never replacing anything and just shoring it up with hope and spit and duct tape.
Yeah, I have a friend. She went to visit her dad recently, and he has a property that he doesn't manage at all. This building is basically held together by spit and tape. She said the dishwasher is from 1975 and it does not work. He won't get rid of it.
In hoarding situations specifically, obviously there's a lot of things that go into hoarding, and we can talk about that on another episode. I think that people who haven't had a lot keep everything because they're like, well, I don't know when this is going to come in useful.
That's the money part. But I think also the emotional attachment. This man, if I'm going to irresponsibly diagnose him, his mother died giving birth to him. I think he's got a weird thing about loss. He wants to hang on to everything, even if it's a 50-year-old dishwasher that doesn't work.
I've had my problems in life, but I have never become emotionally invested in a dishwasher.
You know what? We got to take the wins where we can find them. Over-optimism. This is something that I'm incredibly guilty of. An overly optimistic belief that the investment will pay off or that the decision was the right one can also play a part in continuing fallacy. I've heard it from you. My next thing could be the next big thing. Hope is terrible in a lot of ways, because I just look at it as if you keep having the same experience, it's time to let whatever that thing is go.
I was talking to a reporter this week how that's the thing that I had to leave behind in Los Angeles was the religious idea that the next thing could be the thing, that there's something just around the corner. It's an opportunity that's going to really change my career. And every time I had a big opportunity, I would think, this is going to change my career. And it did incrementally. And walking away from that idea is painful because it feels good to have that hope based on nothing hope. Yeah.
This is what every gambling addict hangs their hat on.
I'm going to go back. But also the gambling addict is having this experience where winning doesn't actually feel that good. It's the shock of losing that is the thing that energizes them. So ultimately, the ongoing sunk cost fallacy is driven by our desire to feel that an initial investment or decision was not wasted. What we're fearing is the regret associated with recognizing we've made a mistake. Maybe that was the right car at the time. Maybe that was the right relationship at the time. But over time, it has become not helpful. Really, what you're saying is you can waste your life, you can waste your career, you can waste your relationships on pride.
Pride and also false hope. I remember thinking after this next couples weekend, he's going to figure it out and he's suddenly going to turn into this man that I needed all along.
This man that he told me he was in the beginning.
Virginia, what are your final thoughts on the sunk cost fallacy?
I'm always interested in things that we do that are not rational and why we do them. This is a super interesting and engaging topic for me, and I hope that our listeners find it useful also. Just in general, when you find yourself stuck in a loop, stuck in a pattern, really take a step back and go, is this about my inability to admit that I was wrong? Is this about my inability to change my goals, direction, relationship? What do I fear that I'm losing in making a change? And is it just losing face? Laura, what are your final thoughts?
For me, it's about rigidity. It's about an unwillingness to be flexible. Everybody says star signs aren't true, but I'm a Scorpio and Scorpios are all about grounding and commitment. So Virginia, if somebody wants to find out about you and your unrelenting willingness to give up this comedy crap.
You know what's funny? I did well in this contest and I was sharing this news with people at work. Everybody was very nice and positive about it. Somebody asked, are you going to do the contest again? Because it takes a lot. It's 3 months of a lot of energy. My resting heart rate went up. My science ring told me. And I think it's the stress of doing this dumb thing. At the after party, I was already thinking about what I was going to do different next year. Somebody at work said, well, yeah, if you're still doing comedy next year, you can totally do it again. If I'm still doing comedy.
But buddy, I'm going to be doing that till I die.
Right. He's just a regular person and he doesn't understand that this is a forever thing. If somebody wants to find out about my career and where I am floundering in the future, you can find it on my website where I keep a calendar updated, and that's www.badinia.com. I also keep a map of everywhere I've ever done comedy that Suzette Smith of the Portland Mercury was kind enough to link to, and that amused me very much. I've gotten 5,000 hits since then. People are checking out where I've done comedy.
Thanks, Suzette.
You can check me out on Instagram at Badinia and on TikTok at Badinia. If you would like to write the podcast with a funny story or a suggestion for a future topic or just some nice things you're thinking about us, you can write us at hello@mysistersatherapist.com. We have a webpage at mysistersatherapist.com. Our Instagram is mysistersatherapist. If you would like to employ us, if you do work for Bitch and Sauce, I will only want to work for the original Bitch and Sauce.
I'm happy to go with G-Sauce. I don't care. I'll take whatever almond-based dip.
Right. If it's vegan and delicious, we will be sponsored by it. You can find us at Hire Us at mysistersatherapist.com. Laura, where can people find you on the internet, should they wish to?
Well, if they're enjoying the sound of my incredibly raspy voice today, hopefully it'll be better by the time we meet in person. LauraRyan.org. If they enjoy me promoting this podcast and want to see my humorous TikToks, they can find me at I am Laura Ryan on TikTok.
Laura, this is the time of the show where sometimes you will read a review or an email we have received. Do you have something to share this week?
Yes, I do. Before I do that, I want everyone who listens to our podcast, as you can tell, we have some incredibly dedicated listeners. In fact, I got an email just today where someone was telling me that they can't get the theme song out of their head.
You're welcome.
You're welcome. Tell your friends, tell your relatives, tell the person who sold you a mattress today about My Sister's a Therapist podcast. This is an Audible review, so thank you for your Audible reviews. This is from Vi, and it says, healing trauma one punchline at a time. Laura and Virginia's genuine lifelong relationship and authentic chemistry flow naturally and build to a hilarious crescendo where we can all laugh and learn something. It's a unique perspective that makes complex topics accessible and relatable. I would highly recommend this podcast to anyone who likes to be entertained and also enjoys a lot of mental health wisdom. Keep it up. Thanks, Vi.
Thank you, Vi. That's so lovely.
If you'd like to be featured on a future episode of My Sister's a Therapist podcast, please, we genuinely welcome.
We beg.
We're begging for reviews on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, Audible, and Amazon Music.
With that said, let's take a moment to meditate on the words of our emotional founder, Billy Ray Valentine, Capricorn, when he said, "We can make it, baby."
Me and you.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.